Welcome to Tux TV. I'm your host, Jimmy Tux. Good evening. Thank you for joining me. I do a quick recap of my beliefs, how it relates to Gary Habermas's, what I believe, failure of minimum facts, and then how it relates to Apologia's minimal witnesses, and then the critique of using minimal witnesses as more than just a title. And nearly every time that I watch a Tavo video, I have one immediate critique. And Apologia has this critique, so I'm going to play this right here. Let me know.
I think we can be pretty certain that the resurrection was not a later theological embellishment.
You seem to be confused. I posit that in the period of the oral tradition before the Gospels were written, the details about the resurrection became embellished. I do not posit the idea of a resurrection is an embellishment. That is an important distinction. I'm saying the fish story got bigger with each telling, but there was an initial fish story.
We probably shouldn't discount as much as we do the reliability of oral tradition. This has been pointed out by James D.G. Dunn. I'll just put a quote on the screen.
The informal controlled oral tradition model, developed by Kenneth Bailey and adopted by James Dunn, proposes that early Christian communities exercised informal control over the tradition, maintaining stability in the core elements while allowing flexibility in the peripheral details. The evidence comes primarily from his personal observations of Middle Eastern village gatherings in the 20th century, observations critics call anecdotal and unsymptomatic. Theodore Whedon questioned whether modern Arab Christian culture can tell us anything reliable about first century Jewish Palestine, given the enormous cultural and chronological gaps. When he examined Bailey's specific examples, he found discrepancies that undermine claims of reliable preservation. The informal controlled oral tradition model is not widely accepted even among Christian scholars. Samuel Byerskog, Craig Keener, and Bart Ehrman are among those who've written pretty devastating critiques. In fact, Bart was recently on this channel talking about it. Kenneth Bailey and James D.G. Dunn propose an informal controlled model. What are these views?
Yes, I deal with them. I deal with them in my book, and I show why they're not acceptable anymore because they have been shown to be wrong.
But we do have lots of cultural and archaeological examples where oral traditions have verified important information.
And thousands of examples where they do not. The possibility of preservation doesn't equate to likely preservation in a religiously charged context. The Jesus movement was first spread face-to-face through storytelling, where the goal was to win converts, not preserve historical details. This overriding evangelical imperative is relatively unchallenged. Claims of apostolic oversight are logically naive and discredited by significant splintering in the movement even in the early days. The mission work and church planting was done by later converts, not by the 12. To paint this era as anything other than the Wild West is based on wishful thinking and disanalogies, not evidence.
We also know from researching, these situations that when there is a mnemonic formula or memorizable formula like a creed or like poetry, where there is verse and meter, as we find in these biblical passages, that this enhances the strength and the robustness of oral traditions.
Yes, but memory devices tell us nothing about the accuracy of the content they preserve. These are the same techniques that preserve the stories of Jack and Jill and Humpty Dumpty.
We do know that a community formed fairly early and was willing to die for their conviction. Now, this is mitigated a little bit in the minimal witnesses model, but let's at least talk about what we do know that's a little more definitive. We know from the 40s to 60s, figures like James, the son of Zebedee, James, the brother of Jesus, and probably Paul by Nero's time were willing to face persecution and death.
The James, son of Zebedee death is...
Okay, this is basically my biggest critique is leading up this succession of kind of false information, presenting of the apologetic, and then relying on that apologetic to be true, while not contending at all that you could see that apologetic as false. And you can see just one right after the other. This is false. This apologetic has been proven false. This apologetic has been proven false. This apologetic has been proven false. For something to be true, it also can't be proven false. And the way it is presented as a true apologetic, I oftentimes feel, which is going to get hammered home in just this next clip, the moment that Tavo and apologetics fails is they don't look for the faults. They just tell it till it looks true. It sounds true. And I refer to that moment, the way they display it, as a conjunction fallacy. And I'm going to go into that as soon as we finish this clip.
Tested only in the New Testament book of Acts. Even Sean McDowell has lowered his confidence in this martyrdom.
I probably would assess James, the son of Zebedee, one notch down. And that's because we have one good source for James in the book of Acts.
James, the brother of Jesus, was killed in a political coup. Paul was killed in the hype surrounding Nero's fire. This tells us nothing about their conviction. I agree that they were probably sincere about their beliefs, but these deaths do not contribute to that case.
We have pretty good evidence that Stephen, who is also often cited as the very first Christian martyr, also faced persecution and death for his adherence to a belief in Jesus.
We do not. We have the New Testament book of Acts as a single attestation, and outside of evangelical circles is widely recognized as full-on Christian propaganda. This story in particular is thought to be invented.
So this suggests that the resurrection conviction,
For the Bible tells me so. And that's the thing. One of the things that I want to point out to anybody who uses Acts, I want you to read about the shipwreck and the shoreline and the details, intricate details of the shoreline. And then I want you to compare that to the chronological order of the empty tomb. And you tell me which one experienced a shoreline when they were desperate to see the shore, and which one saw a risen Jesus when they were desperate to see their Lord and Savior. And it answers it all for me in that comparison.
was at least early, and also that it was intense enough to withstand lethal pressure. And it was also so widespread that this kind of lethal response was required.
Early and widespread tells us nothing about the truth of the beliefs.
Now, we also do have Greco-Roman writers. We have Tacitus. So Tacitus records events that occur in the mid-60s. So that's technically during.
Now, one of the things about this Tacitus, and this is what I clipped in my movie, in my film, The Problem of Deception, is it's about 64, but it's written in 116. And in my opinion, plenty of the younger 4 years before that nullifies that the Rome knew about how great these Christians were in 64, that there is a God, that there is a resurrection, that there is anything to do with a good guy who came and saved the world.
The lifetime of Tacitus. Now, I'll put his quote on the screen.
To the extent that historians even believe these contested claims, these particular Christians were suffering as scapegoats. But more to our point, none of this refutes minimal witnesses, unless you can demonstrate that there were among this group first-hand eyewitnesses of risen Jesus. Nothing here tells us that anyone beyond Peter or Paul had personal experiences. It's a non sequitur.
My next point is this does ignore the role that there probably was in some sort of proto-gospel.
How does it ignore the purely hypothetical proto-gospels?
How?
There could have been 50 attempts before Mark, and that affects neither minimal witnesses hypothesis nor the notion of legendary development.
Josephus lists about 20 Jesuses, depending on the count, because it's kind of confusing on a common name referring to more than one person. Sometimes the same Jesus can listed could be only applying to a select few, and sometimes a group.
The length of the oral tradition period is somewhat inconsequential, nor did the oral tradition period automatically end when the first quill hit the first parchment. Story-based evangelism continued well into the 2nd century, and legendary development continued far after that.
So my bottom line is this. Can you explain the resurrection by treating the Gospels as a theological embellishment? I think the answer is no.
Neat.
Wow.
Do you deny that the Gospels contain embellishment?
Now, you can reframe other aspects of events around the resurrection. For instance, we have Matthew 27, verses 52 through 53, which talks about other saints being resurrected. Now, most scholars treat this as a later idea anyways, but I think this is more easily disprovable because you'd say, well, that's a later embellishment. But the resurrection itself is at the core of all these narratives. So I think it's a fairly weak point to say that the resurrection is exclusively just a later embellishment.
I really don't think you understand the minimal witnesses hypothesis.
I don't think so either. So I don't think they understand. I think they use the term witness as meaning that there is a witness. And I think they use the title of what his hypothesis is as some sort of verification that there is an actual person who saw the resurrected Jesus. And there isn't.
It posits that the very first member of the Jesus movement was Peter, and that Peter 100% believed in the resurrection. It in no way posits that the gospel writers are the ones who invented the notion of Jesus rising from the dead. And now you're acknowledging that at least one detail about the resurrection was embellished, which is all that I posit. For some arbitrary reason, you think fewer details were embellished, but you acknowledge the mechanics. So I'm not sure what we're even doing here.
All right, let's talk about
Okay.
Which is all that I posit. For some arbitrary reason, you think fewer details were embellished, but you acknowledge the mechanics. So I'm not sure what we're even doing here.
This is where the minimum witness needs a title change. I don't think it should be called minimum witness. Now, of course, with my beliefs, let's start here. I want to put a pin in this, and I want to show you what my beliefs are and how they pertained. Because really this is about me. It's not about anything else. It's about me. So I believe it should be called the minimum deceivers, not the minimum witnesses, because there are deceivers here. We have deceivers in our midst, in the book. It is displayed prominently. Now, they could be sincerely deceiving people, but they sincerely believed, and they themselves learned the deception from someplace else. I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, but they themselves passing on something that has not been verified as truth, that can be verified as potentially false, is then in a category of deceiver. If I spread something that isn't true, even though I think it's true, I have passed on something that is a lie, even if I sincerely believe that I was telling the truth. If it turns out later and I can put in a correction on page 6 of of whatever the local newspaper is, corrections always show up on some of those periodicals, right? Well, this book doesn't have that. It just keeps going forward. And there's no witnesses, and minimal witnesses is a title that is inappropriate for this this system. So here's what I believe. I believe that the Bible starts off with two chapters of creation. The creation narrative is then transfers to a deception narrative. So I want to go over that.
Genesis 3.
Who is the serpent? Why is the serpent even in the garden in the first place? That word arum, the Hebrew word that means shrewd or crafty or subtle, also is translated the same word throughout the whole of Proverbs as sensible or prudent. So
to me, this removes immediately, with this translation, a element of a supernatural being. Just any old person can be prudent. Any old person can be sensible. Any old person can be the Aram. Okay? So we have somebody who comes into the Garden of Eden and they deceive you. All right? Don't think it was a god. Don't think it was the devil. Don't believe that it was any kind of Jesus or supernatural being, even though that's what I come to a conclusion of. If you have a clever guy who's designed a deception and their purpose for deceiving and getting paid for it, for instance, and they subjugate women as a result, this is where I would like to interject a image of Warren Jeffs rising to his prophet status. He subjugates the women, he used them as a commodity, and he has as many of them as he wants, and he rewards those who donate the most to his cause, to his religion, and parses them out as he sees fit. Okay? Now, that would have been the commodity, potentially, more valuable than money itself, maybe even more valuable than food at the time of whenever this was created. And so to me, the motivation is that this is the equivalent. Yeah, Daughters of Zion, yuck. So to me, this is the equivalent of a financial scam, except women are the financed piece of exchange, the commodity. And then you have the clothing. When you look at Warren Jeffs and his harem, clearly the clothing is significant. There is a picture of Warren Jeffs standing in the middle of all of these brides, all of these wives, and they look perfect. It is a perfect paradise. But to me, this is a salesmanship of a scam. It is the controlling of the commodity. And on the next page, on Genesis 4,
was Jubal. He was the father of all such as handle the harp and organ.
And the other as making instruments. The first one that built tents, so they explain over there that he built houses of worship for idols. And the brother that invented the playing of instruments played instruments also to Avodah Zarah. So the first.
So a recap of Genesis 4 is bring me your meats, your grains. I like the meats much better because they were better than the crappy meats and grains that were brought to me. A murder ensues. God protects the murderer. Now, in the chapter before, couldn't protect deception in God's controlled environment, but outside of God's controlled environment, more than happy to protect murder. Happy to protect a tree that needs to be untouched, is still in the Garden of Eden, but not deception. Murder on the outside, boy, that's what I need to protect, God says. And while this protection is going on, one of his descendants, Lamech, has some kids. Now, Lamech becomes a mass murderer. And if you want to see an equivalence, to me, the equivalence is just do a Google search for Lost Boys, a fundamental Latter-day Saint Lost Boys. And this gives you an idea of what the commodity of women creates. The polygamy of multiple wives and the subjugation of women, the clothing and the protection of murder all kind of systematically look like the fundamental Latter-day Saints, like polygamy. And while this protection of murder and mass murder are going on, we have idol worship being created, buildings to the idols, music to the idols, poetry to the idols is being created. Now, to me, this is God. Why I am an atheist is because I don't believe that there is a creator out there that wants this. But I do believe there is a liar and a criminal and murderers and deceitful people who do. So, to seal this deal,
The manipulative part of this holy book is on full display.
Chapter 3. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said unto the woman,
How? Well, he goes first into a long creative retelling of Genesis chapters 3 through 11.
So, my question to you is, the moment that this scenario that I've presented to you, the foundation of our God, quote unquote, this really good, definitely not an idol created by man to create a system in which monetary value, money that hasn't even been invented yet, but monetary value is basically the foundation of this book. Money motivation in its equivalency from thousands of years ago. Okay? Soon as you say
Well, he goes
creative
first into a long
retelling
creative
of
retelling of
Genesis 3 through 11,
And I
in Romans 1 through 4, Paul is completing a cycle. He's doing the same thing, except he doesn't need to subjugate women for the money. What does he need to do for the money? Create a Jesus? Create a new and improved infomercial from the first century, from Romans 1 through 4? To me, that is what's going on, Romans 1 through 4. It's a first century in black and white. The old way was hard. Remember how tired you used to be praising and making sacrifices to God and doing it sometimes to the wrong and false God. But don't worry, now there's new and improved Jesus, and then everything goes to color. And to me, that is the Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Tilting. This is why we can never have nice things. Thanks for coming. Music by Brian. I'm not familiar with music by Brian. Welcome. So the Romans 1-4 to me is a first century infomercial to this old style of God, making it new and improved for Jesus. And to me, he is the deceiver in all of this. Peter, who is the minimal witness that Paul is referring to, he is the liar. It's documented that he's a liar. Now, the criminal. Who's the criminal? This is Adrian Gronauer. When I was a kid, my dad took me to see a movie. He took me to see Good Morning Vietnam. And went and saw it, loved the movie. Laughed my ass off. Very entertaining. And after the movie, knowing my dad had been in the draft, I asked him how true to life the story was. And he paused for a second. He looked kind of in the distance and he says, his name was really Adrian Gronauer. And that's about it. So I want to use this as kind of a placeholder for how real life really was versus however it got told in the Bible.
If you're a morning DJ, you are going to oversleep. You come tearing into the station at the very last moment, and you're staggering around, half asleep, half dressed. You don't know where your headphones are. You haven't put in your contact lenses. You don't have any tapes set up. It's just chaos. And as you walk through the studio door, you hear the newsman saying, "That's the latest from the Armed Forces Radio Newsroom. Next news in 1 hour." Now you got to do something. So as you try and pull some records and find your headphones, and you turn on the microphone and you say, Vietnam. That's the way we really did it.
Brilliant. I think that's brilliant. I thought about using that as my moment of Zen. I found a better one. You'll thank me later. Especially you, Earl. So everybody agrees in the minimal witness that Jesus is an apocalyptic preacher. I believe that there was a real guy who was going around saying, "Hey, man, I'm amazing. Why don't you come and follow me? Here, come over and subscribe to my YouTube channel right next to the river or the garden or this hillside. And let me tell you about the cheesemakers." Right? So there's plenty of things about it, but I just want to remind you what modern day apocalyptic preachers sound like and act like. And please enjoy this one.
Do your part. If you have the means to buy 100 buckets of food, then buy 100 buckets of food. You can give food to churches that are unprepared. What are you going to do? Say to the people in the churches around you, say, "I tried to warn you, but you wouldn't listen. You guys can all starve to death." No, if you have the heart of Christ, you will even give the churches some of what you have
Pause
purchased.
it for 1 second. Now, here's the thing that I don't understand, and I'm having trouble getting around. If he's preaching, empty your buckets of food, and God's going to replace the food, why doesn't he just give away the food?
I love Sam. He's hilarious.
I mean, this is a godly guy, right?
Right.
He's got the heart of Jesus.
Yeah.
He empties the buckets,
Yeah.
gives them to other people.
He's
Now, I
giver.
guess they're going to need buckets too.
Yeah.
But they can buy their own buckets. But the food is really the costly part, right? and then his buckets will refill. I don't know why they didn't think of that.
Why
but
didn't they think of that?
Let's see the. Let's
It's
see
a
the theory.
genius
Oh, incidentally,
idea.
$3,700 donation plus shipping. That's what it says. $3,700 donation
Donation
plus shipping.
Yes, right.
And I'll tell you,
John, if they're millionaires,
yeah.
yes, if you have means,
they need to write a check for. They can get it. We'll get it as cheap as we can get it for your church.
Yeah.
Do a
I mean, we're not opposed. We're not opposed to you bargain hunting churches out there making a deal with you.
$1 million worth of food. I'm serious. We've had churches call and order $1 million, so we're not scared of that. But it's going to take a while to get that much food made up, if you can have it.
if you
It takes time, guys. Food, $1 million orders come in all the time, and we're prepared for it. But sometimes it takes a little while to grow that food.
you have the financial means,
But if they're rich, listen, the money's going anyway, John.
exactly.
It's the end times. Your money won't be worth anything next week anyway. Just send it to us.
It's not going to be worth anything. The crash is coming.
We're all gonna die. The Greeks came in, they slaughtered us like crazy and mad, and then things got back to normal. And then the Romans came in, and there was a civil war during that time. Times are tough, and our God just hasn't come and cleaned up this mess yet. But next year, next week, next month, next something is going to finally happen.
Word says
But why
that
not sow it into the Lord and do it? You're not doing it for us. Do it for your church.
the word says.
And can you imagine a church having $1 million worth of food?
Ooh. Then they finished that with a shot. I didn't see that before. What'd you do? Add that the shot of the food, which does not look edible, but I'm sure it is. The Tasty Pantry Deluxe bucket.
Yeah.
Has 10,472 servings. It is for a donation of $3,700. Donation plus shipping. Most of your donations. And that apparently is the black bean burger. Not what I would. Man. And don't worry. If you need $1 million worth of food, they'll be able to sell it to you. They're not afraid of that.
No.
Also, if people want to, donate like hundreds of thousands of dollars to us, we're not afraid of that.
Oh, I should also tell you, look, if you're a person, you get $1 million, and you want to buy a membership for your church or any institution, we can handle it.
Sam is such the entrepreneur. And I would like to extend this to anybody else who's out there who's in need of a membership to Tux TV for $1 million. I can process a lot of memberships. I'm not afraid of processing memberships to the magnitude of the church. Just so you know. So that's a reminder that there are criminals amongst us, apocalyptic preachers. The end times are near. It's and by the way, this is dated well. This is at least 8 years old at this point. This was I don't know. This is at least 8 years old. So the end times didn't happen around 8 years ago. Yeah. Earl is already the Oprah. You get a membership. Thank you very much, Earl. You will be. I will need you to be my Paul when I turn out to be the Peter to the churches. Oh, are we having fun yet? All right. But just let me remind you that there is criminality going on here. All right?
Armed men to arrest Jesus from the garden in a place called Gethsemane.
So let me remind you that Jesus is getting arrested. All right? Now, they blame it on Judas in this because I started after they explained Judas is leading these soldiers. But here's the thing. All these armed guys are coming in and they're going to go get Jesus and he's with his best friend.
Jesus
here.
was there with 3 of his favorite disciples, John, Peter, and James.
Wow. Do you hear that?
Horrified to see Jesus getting arrested,
They're horrified.
Peter took out his sword and cut off the ear of one of the armed men.
No. So let me get this straight. Jesus, a criminal, an apocalyptic preacher, quote unquote, is hanging out in a garden overnight. One thing that's not mentioned in this video is there is also a young naked man who runs away. Now, my question to you. If armed guys slice off one of the soldiers' ears, and this guy lives to tell about it, it's highly unlikely. I mean, it makes the story a little suspect. A naked guy who's standing next to God, keep in mind, Jesus is a God, quote unquote, runs away. Now, this is an admission of guilt, in my opinion. I just stamp Jesus as a criminal. I stamp Jesus as guilty, and seems like he's probably been caught selling too many food buckets, if you know what I mean.
Seeing this, Jesus told him,
Peter, you must not do that. Those who live by the sword often die by it.
Wow. Lives by the sword, die by the sword. So Jesus just witnessed an ear get lopped off.
Jesus was taken to the high priest as a prisoner.
Yeah.
Peter was out.
So the Roman guards go and arrest Jesus, lops off an ear. Clearly one of the guys is armed for there to be an ear removed.
Outside when a woman saw him and asked, "Aren't you one of the disciples of the man they took inside?" Peter replied,
No, Jesus who?
And moved nearer to the guards standing near the gate. One of the guards, seeing him, said,
I'm sure I saw you with the prophet.
What? What prophet?
You were with him, weren't you?
You mean the guy selling food buckets?
Peter said no again. The third time, another guard said that he had seen Peter with Jesus. Peter became very angry.
Very angry. He's as angry as an angry atheist.
And replied furiously,
No, I was not with him.
No, of course not. You mean the guy that had all the guys who were armed and the Roman guys were armed and the guy lost his ear and it didn't end up in a report because that ear that was removed was somehow healed miraculously and it didn't show up in a officer's report? Didn't show up at his trial for his attorney to suggest that this guy's a good guy. See, he lost his ear, but no harm, no foul.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know either.
As soon as...
So, let me get this straight. A criminal, liar.
Peter completed his sentence, a cock crowed loudly.
I bet a cock crowed loudly indeed.
Peter then remembered Jesus' prediction.
Yeah. Yeah. Then he remembered. He didn't seem to remember he was going to lie until he was done lying. How convenient. I'm going to refer to Christy as describing all the ill intentions of Paul in a matter-of-fact way.
The church at Corinth. I'm wondering if they accused him of robbing other churches. And so that's why he's using this language, like, I robbed other churches. Again, he's bear with me in this foolishness. So he's saying, this is so silly. You're saying I robbed people? And so that seems to be the defense he's giving. He's defending himself against this accusation of having robbed other churches. And he says, by accepting support from them in order to serve you. So he's basically saying, listen, yeah, I was getting payment from these other churches, from this church in Macedonia. They supplied my needs. But I did that so that I could better serve you, so that I didn't have to take money from you. We see this major shift in Paul's attitude toward accepting gifts and payment. And if we go to Philippians 4, starting in verse 14, he says to the Philippians, "Yet it was kind of you to share my trouble. And you Philippians yourselves know that in the beginning of the gospel, when I left Macedonia, no church entered into partnership with me in giving and receiving except you only." In verse 18, he says, "I have received full payment and more. I am well supplied, having received the gifts you sent, fragrant offerings, a sacrifice acceptable and pleasing to God, and my God will supply to every need of yours according to the riches of his glory." So
doesn't sound like selling food buckets to me now, does it? That let's petition Apologia to change the name from minimal witnesses to minimal deceivers, or some variation of those, because what's missing out of Habermas's minimal facts is that there is a minimal fact that A, the foundation of Christianity, Romans 1 through 4, is a clever retelling of whatever it is. It is about a criminal who was executed, arrested, and executed. And it's about a liar who doesn't want to know that criminal until after whatever metaphor you want to use for a rooster going cock-a-doodle-doo. And then a later convert comes along who is a deceiver, the clever reteller. I think you have a recipe for a criminal enterprise here, a deception enterprise here. And I don't think you have to look anywhere other than the Bible. You don't have to look anywhere other than the Bible. You don't have to wait for anybody else the moment that you see those things. It's in the foundation, and it's pretty much up until Revelations 20. Unprotected, a complete unprotection is Genesis 3 through Revelation 20. 99.997% of the Bible is under contention of this tension caused by deception. I think it should be called the minimal deceivers. And for anybody who, like Tavo, who wants to use apologetics, I only have one thing to say. It's been a while since I pulled this out, and I know BS loves it, but it's time to bring the receipts that there is a God, that there is Adonai, Yahweh, Elohim, that there is a Jesus exists as a God. Not human Jesus, real God Jesus. That there is a Holy Spirit. That there is a Satan, that there is a devil, that there are demons, that there is angels, that there is a heaven and a hell. Any one of these 8 entities, just get evidence. That's the only thing. That's the only thing. And then when you get that evidence, you need to decipher the difference between the evil spirit and the Holy Spirit, the unclean spirit and the Holy Spirit. The angels and the bad angels, the angels and the rebellious angels, the angels and the devil's angels. And you need to secure an alibi that the devils and the demons and Satan did not write one single utterance recorded into this book. Not one. Now, that right there, my friends, is what it takes to make somebody like me a Christian. That's what it takes. And every single thing that Tavo talks about on his channel, in his own personal way of his form of apologetics, expanding on it, making it sound more true, doing lots and lots of research to make it sound true. And then you get shredded by Apologia in effect, because either he didn't follow what the minimal witness is, or he just jumped to the conclusion that just because the title says witness, he's now going to dream and gloat about witnesses.
Focusing now on James, the brother of Jesus. So we have that's your video. We have this minimal fact from Gary Habermas. And of course, it's taking its time. What?
Oh, what would happen? Sorry, I think.
Oh, for some reason, it's just okay. Well, forget it. So James, the brother of Jesus. This is one of Gary's minimal facts, that he had an experience that he believed was a resurrection appearance. Now, here, Apologia is trying to account for James, but he's not accounting for the minimal fact, even possibly because he's denying James had an experience, whether it was a hallucination, illusion, whatever it was. Instead, he was only persuaded by Peter's testimony. So I chalk that up as another failure, even on the level of just providing a positive.
And the account of a fact, stating that this is a fact, while also not providing an evidence. When Apologia supplies his evidence, he's usually showing that this is false. Over and over and over again, that's what Apologia does. The pattern persists. You didn't really make sure that this is true. And when I can show that it might be false, or it is false, you've kind of failed the apologetic. So Gary Habermas's minimal facts is that James had an experience. Great. Where's James' witness testimony about this experience? We don't have it. So it's all ad hoc. It's all some add something. Whatever you have about James, it's from Paul. Whatever the writing is from James, it's unknown who that James is. But there's no account of their experience converting. It just says that they're a servant. That's it. Like, if it's James, the brother of Jesus, there's no exclamation of, wow, I got to grow up with my brother who was a god. It was amazing. None of that. Zero of that. I got to experience God directly. I said to God this, and God said this to me. None of that. Instead, whatever or whoever wrote the Epistle of James boils down to an apocalyptic preacher's trope, conversation about Abraham, conversation about Job, and conversation about other examples of essentially who is a part of the servitude to the idol worship or non-idol worship brand that is strewn about throughout the Old Testament.
James, the brother of Jesus, previous unbeliever, and Peter, certainly a believer, but he denied his Lord 3 times. And these 3 guys are the guys who are the most sure that they've seen him, and they convince the others. That's the way this theory works. This particular theory works.
That's correct. All we need is Peter and James to believe him, or at least come on board. Paul had his own conversion thing that had nothing at all to do with what Peter or the 12 were saying, as we've already covered extensively here. The origin of Peter's belief is completely unrelated to Paul's conversion by Paul's own words.
It's not an hallucination theory, but it's closely related. And they convince all of them that it's true. Here's the problem. Those 3 guys, Paul, Peter, and James, according to first century sources, all die as martyrs.
That's not a problem at all. That would just put Paul and James into the category of people like the 9/11 hijackers who died for a belief they can't personally attest to. This is only a problem if you posit that Paul and James were knowingly lying.
There we go. Minimal deceivers. Minimal deceivers. It is potential that Paul was informed of what was going on. It is potential that Peter knew to sell his buckets in the first century. He needed a living memory of Jesus. It's that simple. That's how apocalyptic preachers work and operate. Jim Bakker is a criminal. He didn't die for his crime. But you can see the apocalyptic preacher in him runs thick as thieves. The minimal deceivers. Call them what they are. They're criminals, they're liars, and they're deceivers. Jabbermass for your thumbnail? Why, yes, I do. Why? Asking a boy like me on a live stream like this, you silly goose. Oh, that's brilliant. The minimal deceivers. I lobby for the minimal deceiver. Please and please. Do what BS said. Don't forget to hit that like. Got 2 videos. I'm doing one for Skeptic. The trailer is in his hands for my channel, and then I'm still needing to finish that video. And then I've got another video coming out that I'm slightly working on for that. And then maybe I'll get to Apology and Tavo if I get around to it. We need an alibi that these deceivers didn't write their book. Minimal deceivers. Because minimal witnesses just feels like it gives them a hall pass to think they have at least a witness. And they don't. Maybe we should change it to maximal deceivers, not minimal deceivers. Yeah. All right. Thank you all for coming in. And I'm going to go, I'm going to do your moment of Zen. And then we're going to bust out of here. Bowtie bless. I thank you all for coming in. And here's your moment of Zen.
Bourbon balls from 59. First, we crushed the hopes and dreams out of a ½ pound of vanilla wafers. How many grams in a ½ pound?
Half a pound is equal to 50 pence or 67 cents USD.
Great. They call you the future. I like to put them in a baggie and roll them. Woo! Then we add in 2 tablespoons of potted cocoa. Plus a cup of powdered sugar. It smells so good already. Now we gotta force this through a sieve. It's rather labor intensive. I'm never doing this again. Next, we need a cup of pecans. If you don't like nuts, get over it. We're already committed to handling balls, for heaven's sake. Toast them for a few minutes to make sure they're dead.
Bulgaria, officially the Republic of Bulgaria, is a country.
What? Tap, tap. There ain't nothing better than warm nuts. Name one. Not even baking across America. After we spent all that time with the sieve, we just make it chunky again, followed by 2 tablespoons of corn syrup. Finally, 6 tablespoons of any hooch of your choosing. Because despite being called bourbon balls, they really should be called liquor balls. I hardly know her. I'm a Bermudian, so I have to use black seal. The finest spirit of sugarcane on the Atlantic. Then you mix. Says it should be damp, not wet. Choice words. Scooper, boop, roll, and into powdered sugar. Oh. They're old school, but they're good. I can guarantee your grandpa would love these.